Hello, my name is Ian. Welcome to my channel, Inflightmuzik. Today I'm going to show you how to make dark melodies in any scale.
3, 2, 1.
Okay, I want you to keep in mind that what I'm about to show you isn't a rule by any means. It's just a way of achieving your goal. At the end of this, I actually want you to figure out a way to break every rule that I just show you. So anywhere where I say start with this note or don't use that note, try to figure out a way to do it by doing the opposite of what I say. But if you're a beginner and you're trying to make dark melodies, this is definitely going to help you out. Okay, the first thing that I want to show you are these 5 notes right here. Now you could take this pattern of notes and put them anywhere on the piano roll and it's going to work out for you. Now the idea here is I'm avoiding 2 notes that are inside of the scale. Every scale that I'm going to show you has 7 notes. So right now we're just using 5 notes. However, if you wanted to, you could add this note in right here and you'll still come up with dark melodies. The main note that I'm avoiding is this note right here. As long as you avoid this note, typically you're going to be able to make dark melodies. If you take out this note, the melodies get even darker. So that's the only reason why I have this note not highlighted as well. But with the examples that I'm about to show you, we are going to include this note every once in a while. So keep that in mind. What you'll notice, all we're doing, we're starting our melodies with this note, or this note, or this note. So these are the 3 notes within this pattern that I've showed you at the very beginning that we are starting our melodies with. Now that's not to say that you can't start a melody with this note, or this note, or this note. I want you to go in and experiment trying to make a dark melody with those notes as well. But the point of this video is that if you start a melody with these 3 notes and avoid this note right here, you're always going to have a dark melody every time, every single time. And it's going to be darker than starting with any of those other notes. Okay, here I have a dozen melodies. All of them are dark melodies and they all follow some basic concepts that I'm going to show you. Now I have different rhythms, different combinations of notes just to give you multiple examples. Some are more complicated, some are more simple, but they all follow the basic rules that I'm about to show you. Now this first set of 3 melodies, I'm playing all in the minor scale. With this first melody, I'm using the root note of the minor scale to start the melody. Now here you'll see I have different numbers highlighted in the name of each pattern. Here I have highlighted root, here I have highlighted -3 plus 4, and here I have highlighted -2 plus 5. Don't be scared about the math because it's not actual math. We're just doing basic counting. All these numbers are saying, they're actually referring to the same exact note. If you go 3 down from the root note or 4 up from the root note, you end up playing the same exact note. They're just an octave apart from each other. You'll see that exact thing happening from every single one of these titles that I've named each of these patterns. They're all referring to the same note. So it's the starting note that you're going to start your melody with that's going to dictate how dark the melody is going to be. Now here you'll see I have highlighted minor, which is the scale, the type of scale that we're playing in, and I have -1 plus 6. Again, that's referring to the same exact note. So let me go ahead and turn on scale highlighting. We're going to be playing everything in the key of G, but we're going to be switching different scales from major to minor to Phrygian to harmonic minor. So let's first start with the minor. This right here, I'm telling you to avoid this note. If you avoid this note, it's going to help you tremendously to keep your melodies dark and not all of a sudden sound happy. So if you go down from the root note in minor by 1 space, that's the note that you want to avoid. If you go up by 6 notes within the scale, then you're going to avoid that same exact note. And I'll show you exactly what I mean right here. So it says go down 1 note in the scale from the root note. So here's the first note right here. If we go up by 6, it's the same exact note. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's the note that we're going to avoid in all of the examples that I show you within this minor scale. So here's the very first dark melody. We're starting on the root note, and then we're just playing any of the other notes in the scale while avoiding this note right here. Now again, the thing that's making this melody dark is by not adding this note in and by starting on the root note when we're in the minor scale. In this next example, we're starting on the note that's 3 keys down in the scale, which is also the same exact note as going 4 notes up in the scale from the root note. So you can see the root note right here, and we're just going to count down 3 spaces within the scale. 1, 2, 3. And again, the only rule that we're really following here is by avoiding this note right here. Just a simple dark melody. Doesn't have to be complicated like the first one. Now we're going 2 notes down or 5 notes up. It's the same exact note that we're starting with. So you go to the root note, go 2 notes down, 1, 2, or you go up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now that's something else that you want to keep in mind, varying the rhythm of the notes. So don't just have straight on melodies, don't make them too complicated. As long as you're starting with either the root note or 3 notes down within the scale from the root note or 2 notes down within the scale from the root note, you're going to have a dark melody as long as you avoid this note right here. 1 note down from the root note in the minor scale or 6 notes up from the root note in the minor scale. Let's listen to all those examples again. That's starting with the root note. This is starting with 3 notes down within the scale from the root note. This one's 2 notes down from the root note in the minor scale or 5 notes up. It's the same exact note. All right, let's move on to the major scale. So I'm going to go to Scale Helpers Highlighting. We're going to stay in G, and we're just going to switch to major. Again, you could use any of these keys, and everything that I'm telling you is going to work for any of those keys. The note that we're avoiding in the major scale is 3 notes down from the root note, which is the same thing as going 4 notes up from the root note within the scale. So here's G. If we go 3 down in the scale, 1, 2, 3, this is the note that we're avoiding. Same exact note. 3 down or 4 up within the scale, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Again, we're just using these 3 notes to start our melodies. So when you switch to the major scale, this is how you get to this bottom note. You go 2 down within the scale from the root note. And you'll see that I did that here. 1, 2. Or you could go 5 up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's the same note, just an octave higher. So let's listen to the first melody. And I'll go ahead and play that an octave up. I'm just hitting Control A and then Control up to move it up an octave. And again, all we're doing is just avoiding this note right here. 3 down from the root note in the major scale. 1, 2, 3. You can see that we're just avoiding that note all day long. Let's go to the next example. So this example is using this note right here. So to arrive at that note in the major scale, we're just going to go 2 notes up within the scale or 5 notes down. It's the same exact note, just an octave apart. And again, we're just avoiding 3 notes down or 4 notes up within the major scale from the root note. In this example, we're using this note. So in the major scale, to get to that note, we go 3 up or 4 down from the root note within the scale. So let's count. 1, 2, 3. We went 3 up. And again, all we're avoiding is the note 3 notes down from the root note or 4 notes up. So now let's move on to the Phrygian scale. I just called it a scale, but really it's a mode. The difference between a scale and a mode tells you actually tells you what note to start with within a scale. So that's why Phrygian seems to be so popular with a lot of trap artists, because it's using the rules that I'm showing you right now. It's actually getting you to start with one of those minor sounding notes so that your melody will always kind of sound darker than it would if you just started, say for example, if you're in the major scale and you started with the root note in the major scale, it's going to sound kind of happy. But if you decided to start on a different note and make your melody based off of that note, it's going to make the melody sound darker. Another thing that will help you, you'll notice that the note that I'm starting with typically being repeated a lot, and that's called the tonic. The tonic note helps the listener kind of create a foundation in their brain, like what the melody is based upon. So if you're starting with a happier note within the scale, you're going to get a happier tone. You're just going to get a happier sound overall. But if you start with one of the darker notes in the scale and you continue the melody around that note, that's how you're really making these melodies sound dark. And again, all we're doing is just avoiding that happy note. And in Phrygian, that note is going to be 2 notes above the root note or 5 notes below within the scale, below the root note. Here we go with G Phrygian. In Phrygian, we're going to count up 3 notes in the scale from the root note, which is the same thing as going 4 notes down within the scale from the root note. This is a good time for me to point out a trick that I'm doing with these more complicated melodies. You could see that they're not really that complicated when you really think about it. What I'm doing is called an ostinato. An ostinato is very similar to an arpeggio, but the difference is an arpeggio can go into multiple octaves and goes into, different octaves in the scale. An ostinato is just a repeating pattern of notes at all. So while an arpeggio is an ostinato isn't necessarily an arpeggio. An arpeggio will focus more on just the chords, the notes in the chord, and it'll repeat those notes throughout different octaves in the scale. An ostinato is just repeating notes in general within the scale. So here you could see that I'm just repeating this cycle over and over and over again. That's going to help you come up with these top notes a lot easier, just by having a foundation of repetitive notes that kind of get the juices flowing creatively, which is the same concept that I did here with the root note in minor. I'll play that one again, just so that you can hear that it's repeating the same bottom notes over and over again. And here's the example in major. And you could hear some slight variations within the bars where I change up which note plays first within that repeating pattern. But you could see from the first half of the bar to the second half of the bar, it's identical. So you don't have to get too complicated with complicated melodies. The melodies can be as basic as you want them, especially if you're using the concept of an ostinato, which is a small, complicated part that just gets repeated over and over again. It'll just make your music sound a lot more musical. All right, let's go to the second example. And here we're going to the root note of Phrygian. And that will be equivalent to starting with this note. So all we're doing is just, if we're in the scale of Phrygian, we're just starting with the root note and making our melody. And again, we're just avoiding 2 notes up or 5 notes down within the scale from the root note in Phrygian. So 1, 2, this is the note we're avoiding. Now, another thing that you'll notice, a lot of these melodies are just going up the scale and down the scale, up the scale and down the scale. Maybe it goes up a little bit, then down, and then goes way up. You don't have to be jumping around in the scale to make all these melodies thinking that, man, that melody sounds so complicated. The thing that's making it sound complicated, again, it's the ostinato, the repeating effect that I have going on that makes the additional notes that you add in with the melody sound more complicated. So if you, especially when you add in chords, if you have chords and you start arpeggiating those, it's going to sound even more musical. So that's just something to keep in mind. It's not really about trying to use every note in the scale. It's about what notes you're not using, which again is the entire concept of this video. In each of these examples, I'm showing you notes that I'm playing, but mainly I'm trying to get you to focus on what note not to play to make these dark melodies. In this next example, what we're using is this top note. So in Phrygian, to get to that top note, we're just going up 1 note in the scale, which is the same thing as going down 6 notes in the scale. Nothing complicated, just really simple, really dark, and it's just proving the point. Now, this next scale is actually a scale that I really recommend people learn because, one, it's really easy. It's only 1 note different from the scales that I've been showing you. And you'll hear that it has a dark tone that none of these other scales can achieve. And it's because of the additional note that we're adding in. And the really cool thing, harmonic minor automatically eliminates the note that I'm telling you to avoid. You'll notice all of these numbers here that I'm telling you to start your melody with are identical to the same positions in minor. But the difference is right here, you'll see that there isn't a note that I'm eliminating. With harmonic minor, you're able to use this note right here, and it's going to sound dark because of the other notes that are within the scale. You can see right here going down 1 or up 6 from the root. Right here we went down 1 and we're using that note right there, which is the same thing as going up 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we're utilizing it. And you're going to notice that it sounds dark. And that's the power of harmonic minor. It's going to make that 1 note that you wanted to avoid sound dark. And it's an amazing scale, guys. You definitely want to use it. All right, let's go to the first example of harmonic minor. See how dark that note sounded all of a sudden? If we were in the regular minor scale, that note would sound happy. So again, that's the power of harmonic minor, just by changing the other notes around it. So in this next example, we're just going 3 notes down, which again is just this note right here in the scale of harmonic minor. And again, we're utilizing that note that we would normally avoid in minor. So in this last pattern, we're just going 2 notes down or 5 notes up, which is the same exact thing as this note right here in this pattern of notes that I showed you. And again, normally the note that we would be avoiding is this one. And you could hear how dark that note makes this entire melody. Now right here, I decided to add harmonic minor chords just to show you how important chords are when they are accompanying the melody, because the chords will make the melodies even darker than what they sound like on their own. So like in the beginning of this, you might have said, well, that's not as dark as I'd want it to be, but listen to how it sounds when we add in chords. So yeah, that is every example of the different scales that you might use, whether it's a minor scale, a major scale, the Phrygian mode, or harmonic minor, how you would achieve dark melodies in any of those scales in any key. The rules that I showed you right here, that's how you're going to get the darkest melodies. That's not telling you that that's how you get every dark melody, because again, I said you could start your melody with this note, or you could add this note in and add start your melody with that note, and you're going to be able to achieve dark melodies too. But the absolute darkest melodies are with those 3 notes right there. The only thing that I suggest you doing when you're trying to make dark melodies is to avoid this note right here. So if you make your melodies, any of these 5 notes, especially if you start with any of these 3 notes, you're going to have dark melodies, no matter what. So yeah, just avoid this note right here. Use these 3 notes to start your melodies, and experiment trying to start your melodies with these 3 notes. And again, this is specifically for dark melodies. And yeah, if this video helped you out, please like, subscribe, comment if you have any questions, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.